right, welcome in to the Questionable Podcast. I got here with Meko.
What's going on, man?
And Gionne.
Hello.
Hello, Gionne. How are you today?
Doing quite well.
Okay. All right. You got Scotty Questions here also. And today we are joined by Erik Schlitt of Pride of Detroit. Huge fans. Erik, thank you for joining us today.
Of course. Thanks for the invitation.
Of course. We are very excited to have you tonight. We have a lot to talk about. Very heavy lines podcast. We're going to do a quick run through of some Red Wings, Pistons, Tigers notes. And we're very excited to get through that to get to the meat and potatoes here for the main show topics of the Lions. But real quick, can you give us a quick introduction of yourself and maybe a questionable moment we briefly chatted on before?
Yeah. So I've been writing about the Lions for, about 7 years now. And I've been following the draft and writing about the draft for close to 20 something years now. So it's been a lot longer with that. That was more of a hobby for a long time.
Wow.
Look, some questionable moments. I think from a personal standpoint, one of them was when I had my first child, and she needed some. She had some speech delays and stuff like that, and she needed to get some therapy when she was younger. And then we had our second child, and we were at a point where we weren't sure, how to handle it, how to facilitate everything. And I actually stepped away from my job. I quit my job to become like a stay-at-home dad and take care of them, and then started writing about the Lions on a whim. And so that was something that when I stepped away, people were like, "Are you guys going to be able to do it? Are you going to be able to afford it?"
Right.
Yeah. And then I started writing, as a way to interact with adults, I guess, instead of just the children. And it actually it was one of the most professionally rewarding things that it ended up resulting from it, because it led me down the path to where I am now. So it was something at the time that was it was hard, and I had a lot of doubters in my family that weren't sure that I could turn it into anything. And then 3 or 4 years later, I was credentialed, and I've been I've been growing since, and it's worked out really well. So I think that's one of my more prouder questionable moments.
No, that's awesome.
That is 100% a questionable moment.
Absolutely.
Erik, thank you for that. That was on point. Appreciate that. So thank you for that. Well, I'm going to do a quick run through around the horn of Detroit sports, and then we'll get into the main topic with Erik and Gionne and Meko. The Red Wings continue their free fall. However, there's 2 minutes left in the game, and they are winning against the Boston Bruins. So we'll see what happens there. We'll keep you updated. But they're not looking great. Continuing.
It's now 3-4. So yeah,
I called it.
It's nail biting time. Yeah.
Oh, they just scored. Yep. So like I said, with 6 minutes left, that they're probably going to have the game tied up and go into overtime. The Pistons refused to tank by winning 3 in a row. Thanks, Pistons. They're now 10-11 since the All-Star break. Gionne wants to know, is this like the Tigers last season, having a great back half of the season? Maybe. Question mark?
Maybe. The Tigers really had a great back half of the season, as Scott just said. And then they had, as we'll discuss in a little bit, they had a tremendous offseason. And I think we're very excited for opening day and to see that, and to see where they go, because they made some really big moves, and they had a lot of momentum going into the end of the season. And, hopefully they can pick it up.
And to Gionne's point, we have breaking news as of yesterday. The Tigers acquired outfielder Austin Meadows via trade from the Tampa Bay Rays. Meadows is a former All-Star who had a career-high 106 RBIs last season. The move is being universally praised by national sports media. And on top of that, we have a new drop this Friday, the questionable cat series, which will be the Tigers and the Lions series. We have a new Tigers piece, short sleeve, long sleeve. We're going to drop it off to D-Mac tomorrow. He'll have his for opening day downtown.
You forgot no sleeves. We have short sleeves and no sleeves. So this will be like the first.
Oh, snap. Yep. Sorry.
So this is
Thank you for the correction.
Yeah. So for people
no sleeves.
So for people who want to
Suns out, guns out.
Yeah.
Yep. I know a couple of those people.
I might be one of those people.
Oh, anyways, all right. Well, let's hop into it. The main show topics tonight. Meko, I'm going to have you lead us off here. Again, Erik, thank you for joining us tonight. Gionne, excited to hear what you have to say this evening based on what I saw via text today. So, Meko, what's happening with the Lions?
Yeah, so again, like Scotty said, Erik, we're like super excited to have you here. I've been wanting to talk salary cap and free agency for a minute. And we also obviously are going to get into the draft as well, because that's something that you mentioned as well, that you covered the draft for a number of years, starting as a hobby, but then also like obviously now more credentialed. But I think we want to start off with just the salary cap situation and the Lions and free agency. Looking at what Brad Holmes has been doing so far in free agency, could you just give us basically, like, none of us are salary cap experts here. Could you just give us a basic rundown of what the Lions and what Brad Holmes has kind of been doing, or his approach to free agency up to this point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, his approach has been to reward players who they gave 1-year contracts to last year, who then perform admirably, and then he decided to reward them with new contracts for 2022. Now, the nice thing about the structure of a lot of these contracts is that there's not a ton of guarantees in them, and so you have a nice, I think, 79-man roster right now that they're walking into the draft with, and then 9 draft picks. So that's going to take them pretty close to the maximum of 90. But the way the contracts are structured is, if you add a player at a position where you have depth and he's a better player than the bottom guy on the rung, well, then you can lose the bottom guy on the rung without taking a lot of cap penalties, right? And so that's a lot of what's happened, right? There's a ton of zero guarantee contracts, like over half of them are like that, right? And so you do have some of the re-signings that did have some guaranteed money, and then there was some creativity in how those were structured as well. Like, you hear like Khalif Raymond got a 2-year, $9 million contract. Well, that's not really what it was, right?
Yeah.
His cap hit this year is less than $2 million, and you only lose in the total contract is only worth 2.8, right? And so, like, it's not a end all contract, you know what I mean? That it looked like initially. And so a lot of the contracts have been like that. Like Charles Harris's is like that. And they've been really creative. Mike Disner is their cap guy, right?
Okay.
And Disner is a local guy. He's from Birmingham area. And they have tried to give out a lot of low cap hit contracts, but with some of the guys that they think are going to be hanging around like next year, they've added on some voided years, or they've given them multi-year contracts. But again, nothing that's going to marry them to a player beyond this year or maybe next, with a couple of those guys. And that's, I think, done from a we're still building strategy, right?
For sure.
And so like right now, they've got like 24 million available, but a lot of that is going to be allocated for different things. It's going to be earmarked for the draft. It's going to be earmarked for in-season moves, and they're going to save some of that. So their whole approach has been, I think, to add these cheap contracts, keep the roster flexible and pliable so that they can add or lose pieces without a lot of penalties, and then give them some flexibility to have extra money, potentially roll it over in the next year, also have some workable space to have some in-season stuff going. And then, like I said, you got 5 picks in the top 100, so you need to earmark a little bit of money for that. So that's basically the approach, I guess.
Okay. And I know I was a person that I think we all heard Brad Holmes say, like, once the offseason ended and a lot of questions came out about, like, okay, so how are you going to attack free agency? How do you go about, fixing this 3-13-1 team? And I think we all kind of probably incorrectly hung too much on the phrase player acquisition phase.
Acquisition,
right?
yeah, certainly.
Like the minute that came out of his mouth, the first thing I think a lot of us thought was, okay, we're going to spend money in some kind of way. And John, I know you had a really good follow-up question to this, pertaining specifically to this point right here.
But yeah, just to piggyback right off of that is that we heard reports that the Lions had the 6th most cap space in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
So, and that was another thing that led us on this show, and a lot of us, I think, to say, we have 6th most cap. Our GM is saying we're in player acquisition, and then kind of very subtle little things happen. So I was wanted to ask you, does that give you any insight into maybe a longer term strategy, or like, why do you think it kind of played out the way that it did with 6th most cap and then the moves that they made?
Yeah, I definitely think it's because it's year 2 of what is probably a 3-year rebuild to be competitive, right?
Yeah.
And their strategy is to build through the draft, right? So last year they added 6 draft picks, and then seven, and then they added a whole bunch of those UDFA guys who came in and contributed, and so they added a really nice base of young players. Now you're going to add another 9 plus some more UDFA guys.
Right.
And by the time this season is over, about half of your roster is going to be handpicked guys in their 1st or 2nd year of their contracts. And that gives you a really nice base to build off of into year 3. So now when you go into year 3, you're going into year 3 with 2 first-round draft picks again, and a whole bunch of regular picks that you're holding on to. And now you're going to have a little bit more money. And if you can roll over some from this year to give yourself even more money next year, even better. And now they can make some, I think, bigger moves if they need to in year 3.
Eric, is this what the Rams did back? Like, is this how the Rams built? Now I know they're just scooping like giant free agents, right?
Sure.
In stars, but is this how they built the Rams?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, like what made the Rams so successful and able to do what they did last year was because half of their roster was talent that they drafted, right?
Yeah.
And Brad Holmes had a big hand in that as well, right?
That's why I ask, right?
Yeah, certainly. So if you can add enough of a base of young players where you have a half your roster with these young guys, then yeah, you can start getting a little bit more liberal with your draft picks to trade them away for like higher profile athletes. Because once you get to a point where you're winning and you're challenging and you're competitive, and you have that base established, that's how you build for the long term. And I think that's really what he's trying to accomplish here. Is look, he got a 5-year contract and Campbell got a 6-year contract. That's because they knew it was going to take time, right? Like that was not just we like you, so we're going to give you a big deal. No, it's going to take us 3 years to get to a point where we can even really show you what we can do with our job. And so, yeah, they'll ideally, if things continue to play out well and they start to win more games and they become successful, they'll be able to follow that blueprint of being able to, if you can keep adding with those day 3 picks, keep adding talent with, those guys that aren't first rounders, then you can start being creative with how you acquire talent.
Right. And so I guess that's safe to say, like, then what Brad Holmes has been doing up to this point isn't new, right? Like, this is not revolutionary of how he's approaching free agency and how he's handing out contracts, right?
Well, it's new for Detroit, right?
I mean, like it's new for us. Like, I think, especially with the last group of guys that were here and the money that was handed out. But as far as like, if Lions fans were to take a step back and really take a look at the NFL as a whole, like what Brad Holmes is doing is not actually new, right? Like this is something that it sounds like winning organizations typically do, or try to, at least.
Certainly. And the hard part is that the NFL is such a win now league that a lot of ownership won't give coaches and GMs the time to do this. But I think with the shift in ownership from Martha to Sheila, that Sheila has come in with a fresh approach and said, okay, we need to just take a beat, do this the right way, take our time, and understand, that we have to do things differently than what we've been doing the last couple decades.
Which I appreciate. And when that happened and when they signed to these longer deals, it was the first time I thought, wow, these guys might know what they're doing since they need so much time. Oh, that sounds about right. After dealing what we've dealt with for years and decades, if you will.
No, I think that's a really good point, Scotty. Like, I think, again, this is, like Erik said, this is something that's new to Detroit, but I think, you know, and I think that's why you're kind of getting, I mean, even myself, right? Like, I've tensed up at times because, again, like, I can still see the holes on this team, and it's a little uncomfortable at times to think like, okay, so we're going to basically plug these holes again with more young talent, which, you know, young talent playing was part of the reason that this team got off to a slow start last year, right? Like, I don't think it was the biggest issue. I think the quarterback was probably the biggest issue that they got off to such a rocky start, but we did have a lot of young guys playing. And so with that in mind, like, is there a downside to this strategy that Brad Holmes is taking? Is there a downside, or not just Brad Holmes, because apparently it seems like everybody's on board with this. So is there a downside to the Lions taking this strategy of, you know, smaller contracts with less guaranteed money? Is there something that could potentially be, is this something that could be a roadblock down the line when they try to be competitive?
Well, the trick is the guys have to hit. Right?
Yeah.
You have to have a GM that can identify talent, and then you have to have a coaching staff that can develop that talent. And if you can do that, this is an easy strategy to find success, because you're going to have a whole bunch of young players that are hungry and have experience and will be ahead. But yeah, if you miss, that's a problem. Now, as far as contractually, I don't think there is a really big downside to what they're doing. They're voided years.
Yeah,
that's a new strategy that a lot of GMs are doing now, but that's not that big of a deal, because it's kind of like you using a credit card, right? Like, you know that you're going to get a raise next year, right? The team's going to get an extra $10 million in cap space across the league, right? Because TV contracts are coming in next year. There's going to be a whole bunch of money that comes in. So what they've done is, like with Chark, right? He has a $10 million guaranteed contract, but he's only costing $4 million this year, and it's going to cost $6 million next year. Well, what Holmes and Disner have done here is they've said, let's take that $6 million, and by making it a void, that frees it up for this year. So they have that $6 million. But here's the deal: if they don't use that $6 million, they can just carry it over and pay that off then, right? Right. So it's when you have a guy that you like, and in that it's worth it, like, you can add these voided years on to just pay them off later. The trick is you can't do it too much, right?
Right.
You can only do it with like guys that you feel strongly about, guys that you are invested in. And so if they can manage the season, and they can avoid injuries, and they can avoid having to, you know, the big thing that hurt them last year was that so many guys on IR. And when you put a guy on IR, that counts against your cap. Then you have to add a guy to replace him, and then that counts against your cap, right? And so you're getting hit both ways. And so what GMs will do is they'll leave like about anywhere between $5 and $10 million as like a cushion for in-season moves. And last season they ran out. If you recall, in week 17, they had to redo Vitai's contract to free up 1.7 or 1.8 million because they just didn't have the money. And so I think Holmes is being a little bit more cautious this year, saving a little bit more in his back pocket. Plus he wants that. I think he wants to be able to roll over more than what they did last year as well. So, the one other thing I want to add about contracts, I kind of glossed over this, is a lot of their contracts are incentive based, right?
Yes.
If you do this, you get that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not sure if you or your audience is familiar with the difference between a likely to be earned bonus and a not likely to be earned bonus. But basically, here's how it works. If you give a player an incentive bonus for like games played, like you're saying, if you play in all 17 games, you get $100,000 extra, right?
Right.
Well, if that player played in 17 games last year, then that becomes a likely to be earned bonus, and that money counts against the cap. But if that player played in one game last year, only 1/17th of that 100,000 counts against your cap this year, and then the it's considered likely to be earned. The rest of it is not likely to be earned, and that goes to next year. Now, the way it works is if someone doesn't meet that, like if they're expected to play 17 games and they only play 10, well, the Lions will get a credit. They actually got about $8 million, a little over $8 million, $8.4 million in credit.
Wow.
Because of contracts like this last year. So they've added a lot of these incentive-based contracts in that they're saying, hey, if you can do it, you're going to get the money right off the bat. But if you don't live up to it, we're going to get that money, that credit for that money back
Sure.
in cap space. So it's another, when you're working with a young team like this, adding those incentives into it, it can be really beneficial as well. And it's another way that you're just kind of holding money or saving money for the future. And it can be big money when it's all said and done.
Is this the cap doctor? Thank you, Erik, for that.
I was gonna say,
That
Erik,
was amazing way to explain it.
You are leaving money on the table because you need to be like conducting a masterclass on NFL salary cap. Like this is amazing.
I'd pay $25.
Yeah. Well, so and it really ties into something that I've been wondering for at least a month now. As all of these other teams are making their moves, and we've kind of discussed it here, and I've sort of dubbed it like Schrodinger's cap space, because it seems to like both exist and not exist.
Yeah.
In that, like,
Really,
you have Jacksonville in just spend mode, and then you have Green Bay signing Aaron Rodgers, and the cap just doesn't seem to matter to them either. But then you have the Dallas Cowboys cutting Amari Cooper because they can't afford him. Mm-hmm. So it's like, so I've always wondered, like, what's going on behind the curtain there?
Yeah, it comes back to that whole credit card theory, right?
Yeah.
The Packers, the Saints, they're putting a lot of credit on their cards right now.
Okay.
And they're saying we're gonna restructure contracts so that we're pushing, though the money will come due in the future, but not right now. And that allows us to get under the cap. Whereas Dallas didn't want to get into that, shape. And Dallas said, look, we're gonna cut them, and we're gonna just stick with what we have, and we're gonna not try and put ourselves into a spot where we're going to be leveraged, I guess, down the road. And that's really what happens with the Saints. Like, the Saints are they're just hanging on, and they've done some cap gymnastics like you wouldn't believe, but they've got players on their roster that they just literally cannot cut because it costs them like $80 million to cut up like a player, right? Like a certain specific players. And that's the penalty, is eventually you're going to just tie yourself in knots, right? And so, yeah, it doesn't exist if you're a team that is saying we're making a run for it, and we're willing to try and put the money on layaway now so that we can try and get it done. But if you're a team that's trying to establish yourself and trying to build stability and build a roster, that's not as much in your best interest. You can do it here and there, but as long as you know that you're going to, your paycheck at the end of the month is going to cover it, then you're fine. You can use that credit card to buy you a little room. But yeah, the Rams, the Packers, those teams are all in, and eventually that check's going to come due. It's just a matter of when.
Right, man. Like I said, like this is a ton of information that, like I said, like you and Jeremy need to get together and figure out if there's some way you could put this type of information behind a paywall, because like it's has its weight in gold, right? Like, this is some valuable stuff that I think a lot of fans don't get to know, and I don't think they get a chance to have it explained to them this way, because obviously the team's not going to break it down that way, and other media outlets, it's not valuable, right, in that sense. But I think this is going to be really, really valuable to a lot of people. It's because it's something that they just don't typically get to hear, and they don't get to typically hear contracts broken down this way.
Yeah, look, I think that's one of the benefits of the platform that Jeremy and I have, right? Being a blogging site, right? Is that we can get into the nitty gritty of some details that like some of the bigger media guys aren't going to want to get into. And so, we learn as much as we possibly can to know all these little intimate details. And I think it's just unique. It's fascinating to me. And that's why I've just been reading and, studying this for years.
Erik, what's interesting to me is there's no way the media or any of those will share this info. You're going to have to find it out yourself, right? To be honest, I feel like that's tricks of the trade, right? And part of the group, you're part of, the leaders that know what's going on. in the industry, in the NFL league. So it's very impressive that you were able to get this, digest this, and process this, because that would take a ton to learn and teach yourself, right? Which you did, correct?
It takes a while. Yeah. Yeah. Because the league changes it. It's like the rules. They change the rules all the time. Right. And so to try and keep up with all of it, it can be daunting. But once you get a base, it's like math. Once you get a base, like you can build on that math, right? You can, and it just becomes a little bit easier every year.
One question quick before we go any further. What is the most recent rule change in regards to the cap, or something interesting that we might not know, or that the majority of NFL viewers would not know?
They had a lot of stipulations with the COVID stuff, right? That they had to implement them. And now it's
It was
unclear.
very vague to myself viewing it. Very vague. Like they had some things, didn't have some. It was very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, from how to IR players to it was all really overly complicated, and it's hard to say what's going to carry over. So like they gave you more money for a practice squad, because the practice squad expanded because you needed to have more guys that were through the process and available, right? But then like, so I mean, that's really the big thing, is they made so many little changes to behind the scenes with all the COVID restrictions. But I think we're starting, I don't know, we still have to kind of figure it out. Like a lot of times they'll pass rules that we don't figure out until somebody's like, wait a minute, why is that like that? And then we're like, we have to like figure it out, research it and figure it out. That's just kind of how the NFL is. But yeah, it's it's an always changing process. Let me put it that way.
Got it. Okay.
No, and like I said, Eric, like I could honestly sit here and listen to you talk salary cap, because like I said, this is literally blowing my mind. And it is honestly, like, again, another reason that we wanted to have you on the show is because we had questions and concerns about how the Lions were choosing to approach free agency. But the way that you just broke this down, like, honestly, like I feel 1,000 times better about how this team is kind of
saving that money.
Exactly. So real quick, we're gonna shift gears here a little bit. I apologize to anybody who's listening. We are having like a little bit of like a delay here and there, but Eric, you're still coming in perfectly fine for the most part.
I think we're good.
So, if there's any type of audio issues on the other end, again, we kind of apologize, but I think everybody's still being able to gather and digest everything that's being kind of shared here. But going back to something you were talking about before, you were talking about, again, in learning so much about the salary cap, you got really intimate with this knowledge and really committed to studying it. I want to talk about something else that you seem to be very intimate and passionate about, and that you've done a lot of studying on, and that would be NFL draft prospect Travon Walker.
Oh boy.
I think we've tried to do a really good job, and honestly, this was not intentional at all. But we've kind of done a decent job on the show of covering some of the top prospects that are in play for the Lions at 2. We've had a show where we talked about Malik Willis. We've talked about Kayvon Thibodeaux. Last week we had on Easy from Woodward Sports, who was a big Kyle Hamilton guy, so he got to kind of beat the drum for Kyle Hamilton. And it just so happens that you're a Travon Walker guy who is also a guy that's in the mix. So I kind of want to give you the floor right now to kind of make your case for Travon Walker and why you believe he is such a good fit for the Lions at 2.
So yeah, look, the thing with Walker is that he's a different style of defensive lineman, and I think what a lot of people get caught up on is that he gets the edge label, right? And because he gets the edge label, I think people have in their mind this guy that the edge players all have to come off the edge and they have to be able to bend and like dip and just be able to just be super athletes. And he's a totally different kind of guy. The way I've kind of been referring to him is kind of like superhero Trey Flowers, right? Like he can do a lot of the things that Trey Flowers could do, where he could set the edge, where he can use a lot of speed to power. He can dip inside to the 3 technique. He can line up as a pure 4-3 D end. He can stand up as a 3-4 outside linebacker, right? Now he's doing all of this at 6'5", 300 or 270 pounds, and then he's got like arm length. Like his arm length is ridiculous. I'm gonna look it up just so that I have the right number, so that I'm not exaggerating. His arm length is 35.5 inches long. Right now, Hutchinson got dinged because his were 32 inches long. He's 3 inches plus longer than Hutchinson, right? Like he has this insane wingspan. And so he's, if you look at his measurements or his like measurables, like how fast he ran, his agility to move back and forth, like all those things were really just off the chart. He's one of only like 2 players in the whole draft that was like average to above average, or actually above average in every single measurement, from hand size, arm length, height, weight, speed, agility, jumping. All of it was above average. I think Christian Watson, the North Dakota State receiver, was the other one that was above average in everything. So it's rare to find a player that has all of those dynamics. So
yeah,
he has this ability to place up and down the line. He at Georgia, he was a guy who, when Jordan Davis left the field, their nose tackle, he left the field, Walker was the one who shifted inside to take his spot, right? Because he was filling that same kind of role. So he has some Deshaun Hand elements to his game as well. Well, he's like, can be that like, a NASCAR head over the nose and just be able to pressure that nose tackle with just that speed and agility on an obvious passing down. He has a quick enough step where he's going to beat guards routinely when he lines up inside. Now his step isn't as efficient on the outside, and he's not a perfect prospect, so he has his flaws. He can work on getting a secondary pass rush move. Like basically his secondary pass rush move is an extension of his first, right? He has insane power. I mean, like I haven't seen power like this in years, and he just can leverage people. It's scary, man. I'm telling you, he has the ability.
Time out.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, I believe you. I'm just so what you're saying. I'm gonna interrupt you. So he's versatile, right?
Yes.
He's versatile, can do different things, and he's super strong.
Yes.
He's like He-Man. And then third, he's like Batman. So he's got wingspan. And I'm being funny, but seriously, so he is kind of, almost everything. Like the versatility, I think, is what we need for the Lions. I mean,
so what doesn't he have?
Correct. Thank you.
Yeah. So he doesn't have bend, right? So he's not going to be your traditional burn off the edge rusher, right? So if you're going into this draft and you're saying, I want a guy who just comes off the edge like his hair's on fire, then you want Hutchinson or you want Thibodeaux.
Okay.
You're not going to get that out of Travon Walker. That's not his game. But they have Charles Harris. They have Romeo Okwara. They have Julian Okwara. They have guys that can come off the edge like that. Like they don't necessarily need that. With Walker, he can give you some inside-outside pass rush versatility, and they're really not so great as with their interior pass rush, right? And he can give them some of that, right? So yes, he has all these different traits. Now his second, his second flaw here is that when he goes speed to power, he understands leverage and he can get into guys. But if he loses that leverage or if he gets knocked down, his secondary move is basically just to use his length. And that's not like a good enough secondary move. Like he needs to be able to chop swim or something like that, right? Like he has those that he uses, but almost always he goes straight to the bull rush. He uses that insane. I mean, he has arm length that's longer than most of the offensive tackles. And so that gives him that he hits first, right? And when he hits first and he has that power, he jars them back.
Could you say an upper hand?
Yeah, right. And so I wish that he had another move that he relied on. The problem is he's never really had to. Right. And because when you don't really have to do that,
you don't learn it.
Get lazy. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when you look at his athleticism and you look at his like Raz card and stuff like that, like you see that the potential is there. You see him hit the rip move every once in a while. You see him do the under, right? Like you can see that him do that. He just doesn't use it on the field regularly. Now, the reason he doesn't is because of Georgia's scheme. And this is now the third flaw that people bring up, is that he doesn't have the stats. But here's the thing. When you're playing on the nose or at the 3, you're not going to have edge rusher stats. You're just not, because you're in. If he wasn't an edge rusher, if he was a defensive tackle, if that was his label, he was a defensive tackle, people would be like saying, this is the next Aaron Donald. Like that's how crazy they would be crazy. I'm not saying he's going to be. Don't slow me down there. I'm saying that would be the narrative, right? The narrative would be that this is a guy who's special, right? But he's not. I mean, he's not at that like freakish Aaron Donald level. I mean, he's not there. But because he's an edge, because he's labeled an edge, and then he gets this comparison that he's not there statistically. Well, when you look at Georgia's scheme, Georgia runs a 2-gapping scheme, and where that's more the Patricia-esque, right? Where he's asked to basically get into that offensive lineman, leverage him out of the way, and create space for the 3 linebackers behind him, who are all insanely fast at Georgia, right? I mean, insanely fast. And so a lot of the time, the scheme called for him to basically just move people out of the way so the linebackers could come in, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you look at, and that's another thing that's going to knock down his potential, right? Or his statistical potential, right? And so he's working against, the scheme is working against him from a statistical standpoint. But if you look at the other Georgia DL, it's kind of the same way. They're not where they need to be. That's why Jordan Davis is like, can he play a full game,
all 4 downs?
Right? Yeah, like can he do it? Right? Like there are just questions about Jordan Davis because he only played on like 45% of snaps or something.
Right.
But if you watch him, my goodness, Jordan Davis is a freaky athlete. Well, it's the same thing with Walker. You have all these 5 stars on Georgia that are just sitting there that you're rotating in and out. Because look, let's be real. In college, if you don't rotate those 5 stars in, those 5 stars bail. And then your program suffers, right? So you have to rotate these guys. I mean, I went to Michigan, so I'm watching Michigan last year, and they're moving JJ McCarthy in at quarterback, right? Because they don't want to lose him like they did with some of their other quarterbacks, right? So it's the same thing. Georgia is just loaded. Bama does the same thing. Bama is loaded, and so there's this rotation of players. It's just the natural evolution of the college game. So he has flaws, but the potential that he has is just so vast, and his athleticism is just so rare and he can help in so many different areas. He's just so appealing to me. Right.
Right.
Like, I like Hutchinson. I like Walker. I like Thibodeaux. But I just like Walker a little bit more than Thibodeaux, right? So that's the trick, right? Now I know people like Malik. There's a lot that I like about Malik. There's some things I don't like about Malik.
I was gonna say you recently had to you recently had to air it out on Twitter that just because you have questions about some of these prospects does not mean that you actually hate them. It's just you even acknowledge with Travon Walker in your explanation of him that he does have flaws, and I think all of these prospects do. I think we get hung up on that in this draft in particular because the first thing that came out about this draft class was, oh well, there's no top tier talent, so everybody is nitpicking. I want to say almost everybody except for Aiden Hutchinson. Like I feel like because like he's kind of like the consensus #1 pick, like nobody's really picking on him.
Yeah, the tackles too. I think Neal and Icky get a lot of they're pretty clean as well. Yeah. But the edge rushers are getting picked apart. I think unfairly, personally.
Yeah, and so I want to piggyback off of something that you said as far as again the scheme working against Travon Walker. I feel like one guy that I haven't heard him get compared to enough. I've heard him get compared to Hutchinson, and I've heard him getting compared to Thibodeaux. But there's one guy that I don't hear him getting compared to as much, and I feel like I'm kind of interested in your opinion on it, and that's Jermaine Johnson, who was a former teammate of his at Georgia and did exactly what you said, where he played at Georgia. The scheme didn't necessarily help highlight his skill set, so he did what you're saying, which was he transferred out. He was a transfer from a community college. He was on Last Chance U, transferred to Georgia, had a pretty good year, and was able to transfer out to Florida State, where he had ridiculous numbers in comparison to what he did at Georgia. Why do you think there's not? I guess it's a 2-part question. One, why is there not enough conversation about Travon Walker being compared to Jermaine Johnson? And 2, why isn't Jermaine Johnson kind of, I guess, getting that same level of love of maybe should be an option or maybe be in consideration at number 2.
I think he might be more than people want to give him credit for. And I don't think he gets compared to Walker as much because he's not the same size and he plays a little bit differently. Like he's more of that edge bender. In last year in Georgia's scheme, Adam Anderson, he was that guy. Like Adam Anderson and Jermaine were similar, right? But I think what he did at Florida State is it really makes. First of all, let me pump back my Walker highlights here. I think this is a good indicator that you can leave Georgia's scheme and get better, and you can produce when it's more attacking. I think that translates to Walker as well. But as far as Johnson, I do think he's in the conversation more because he does a couple of things that he does a couple of things better than I think what Thibodeaux does. And I think the comparison between him and Thibodeaux is really a lot of the conversation. Now, he's not as polished of an edge rusher as Thibodeaux, but he sets the edge better. And that's a big thing in the NFL. And I know it gets glossed over a ton. It is. It's a really big deal. It gets glossed over a lot in draft analysis, especially when you're talking about edge guys, because people get so focused on sacks and pressure percentages and stuff like that. But Johnson he's very complete in a lot of ways, right? And so it's a weird comparison, but he kind of reminds me of Max Crosby a little bit from the Raiders, right? Yeah. Where he's got a lot of these skills, but he doesn't look like he's exceptional at it, but he's a hard worker. And then eventually it'll start to click for him down the road. I think it will. I think he has that talent where he could be considered. I mean, maybe he's considered it too. I mean, they saw him at the Senior Bowl and they loved him a lot. Look, if they want a bender, they want a bender, and Malik isn't their guy, and Hutchinson's off the board at 1, and they want a bender who can set the edge. He can set the edge better than Thibodeaux can, and that's a big deal. Now, again, you got to have these things lining up in order for it to fall that way. But he's just not as polished, right? And because and some of that is you go from community college to Georgia's 2 gapping to now Florida's 1 gapping, and so he's not as ready to go, I guess, not as clean, right? But he's a good player, and I think he's going to get a lot of love. Would not surprise me at all if he ends up going in the top 10. He should go in the top 15. And like I said, depending on with this type of draft class where there's a kind of a muddled mix, you never know how far some of these guys can rise up the boards. And the Lions got a really good look at him at the Senior Bowl when he just started beating people up, right? So I do think he is overlooked. And if they're say they want this combo of players, he could be in the mix.
So I was going to say, because really quick, because I was going to say Jermaine Johnson to me, in kind of like how his draft process has gone so far, reminds me a lot of when Montez Sweat came out. Sure. And Montez had I believe he went to the Senior Bowl, but I believe he had I know he had an amazing combine. Yeah. He had all the measurables and all of this stuff.
I remember that. And I love the combine.
Mm-hmm. And I remember
the big performances. Yeah. Because then it's just this guy's not going to be good.
But I just remember sitting there and being if the Lions can get an opportunity to take him, they should absolutely take him. And I can't remember if he went before the Lions pick or
after, I believe.
I think it was after, because I think that's the year we picked Frank Ragnow. And I think Montez Sweat was picked after, if I remember. If it wasn't Frank Ragnow, it was probably Jared Davis, which if it was Jared Davis, I'm going to out.
I think it was after.
But the Montez Sweat had every characteristic. He had good numbers at Mississippi State, and it was for some reason or another, people just kind of overlooked it. And I think he's gone to Washington, and maybe hasn't necessarily set the world on fire, but he's proven in a very similar vein as you were talking about with Max Crosby, where it's hey, this guy is figuring it out, and he's going to be an impact player for your roster. So I agree with you. If Jermaine Johnson is somebody that they want to consider, I'm still really high on Thibodeaux just because I think his ceiling is just that much higher than all of these edge rushers and specifically the pure edge rushers. I think Kayvon's ceiling is just a little bit higher, but I would not be upset with Jermaine Johnson based off of what you're saying, as far as again, he has all the tools and he's a little bit of a better edge setter when it comes to the run game.
1 and 2 gapping familiar as well. So if you're running a hybrid scheme like the Lions do, that's appealing as well. If you have a guy who can understand how to live in both 3 and 4-man fronts.
Absolutely. Scotty, I'm sorry I cut you off. What were you gonna?
No, it's fine. I was gonna. John was making a face. No, because I think he was agreeing with a point from Erik and was like, "See, I told you." And I wanted to ask him what he was referring to. For those listening, I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. John was making eyes at something, and I'm curious to hear what it was.
Oh boy, I have nothing. No, that was I think you were projecting.
No, not.
There was something about, I think it was something along the lines related to Kayvon Thibodeaux, and as far as like him being a little more complete than Kayvon. And I think
that was just that was surprising to me, because I just hadn't heard that before. I hadn't heard anyone break down these other players as much, and so that just really surprised me, because as you said, the narrative really has been Hutchinson, Thibodeaux, with a little Hamilton thrown in there, and then
Hamilton
if
sauce.
we want to get spicy, we can talk about Malik, and then that's pretty much the 4. Those are like the 4 guys that have been dominating conversation. But Travon Walker and Jermaine Johnson, those, it's very new.
So Erik, based on this is unbelievable information to process. I'm going to listen to this podcast like 5 times after we're done in a couple days. Honestly, I wish I could process it again. I probably have more questions, but in general, who do you think, and I know this is obviously a loaded question and we're still 3 weeks out. I don't think a lot of things are changing between now and then, but who do you think the Lions should take, in your opinion? And who do you think they will take? And again, this is just from the knowledge we know, and what we know, what you know, obviously a little bit different, but I'm just curious as to, again, who you think we should take and who you think they will take, with what information we have today.
I think there's going to be a healthy debate between Walker or Hutchinson at 1.
Okay.
And I think the Lions can get the other guy. I know there's a lot of Thibodeaux fans. I acknowledge that. I think he's more in the mix than I'm probably giving him credit for, right? But again, in my opinion, I think Walker is able to impact this team in a manner that is greater than just coming off of the edge. And that is appealing to me, and I believe that's what's going to be appealing to the staff.
I think that the way in which you presented that makes sense, and it is something I believe the Lions are going for. The additional impact, the additional value, more than the player.
Yeah.
We are using the word culture, but it's more than that. It's what they're going to give. Now, having said that, I forgot I was going.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought I knew where you were going with this, but
where was I going with it?
I think this is where you were going with it, because last week, I don't know if you got to catch any of the clips from our show last week.
I was going conspiracy theory. Sorry, okay. I was going to go conspiracy. Like, Erik, have you heard Meko's conspiracy theory about Thibs? That's where I was going to go.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah.
Meko, go ahead first with yours, and then we can go back to conspiracy if you want.
Yeah, no. I was going to, because this is kind of a little bit in the same vein.
All right.
Conspiracy.
So we're in the same vein.
I wasn't sure if you had caught our show last week, but when we had Easy on, Easy kind of gave his take on what he's heard and a couple sources that he, working at Woodward Sports, the sources that they're talking to and what he's kind of heard. And I want to kind of get your get a meter on how believable this is versus, maybe it's a little bit more smoke. But Easy's take was that it's from his understanding that the Lions would prefer to trade this pick. Because there's a lot of people that would like to get ahead of other teams or get ahead of the Lions or possibly take the Lions spot to get Malik Willis, right? And if the Lions cannot move that pick, and for example, if I get this correct, guys, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong.
I will. Yeah.
If the idea is that somebody wants to possibly get up to 1 to take Malik, and if they can't, and if they can, and Malik is gone, that the Lions have Kayvon Thibodeaux as the top player on their board, and they would take Kayvon over anybody else.
So yeah, so basically, Erik, the the understanding is that Easy had information in which that teams are wanting to trade up to 1 to take Malik or whoever they want to take before the Lions, who they think the Lions are going to take. What Easy said was Malik. And if that was the case, if they were going to move up to 1, we would move back and trade back. And the Lions would, because if they're going to take who they want, the Lions would then trade back. It was his understanding based on his context, right? That's how I understood it, Meko.
Yeah, it was basically, I mean,
it was that leapfrogging. And I know, and I've heard some of these trade things out there a little bit, but again, what do we really know, I guess?
Yeah. So I guess to make this question a little bit simpler.
Okay.
Do you believe that the Lions would take Malik Willis if they were not moving at all? Do you think Malik Willis is that high on their list where they're like, we're taking Malik at 2 over anybody else? And I guess if for some reason somebody did jump them and take Malik, do you think Kayvon is that high on their list where Kayvon's like potentially their number 1 or number 2 player on their board?
Or is it 8? Like,
well, okay. Let me start with Malik. I don't think Malik Willis is in the conversation right now, and I'll tell you why. Brad Holmes at the owners meeting said to the media that he has a lot of people on his board, and that's natural. That's GM speak.
Sure.
But he also said that he was willing to trade out of the 2 spot before Jacksonville make their pick. Now, here's the deal. If you have a quarterback in mind, you are going to take him no matter what. If you have that quarterback that you love, no trade offer is going to get you off that spot. And if he's willing to trade out without even knowing what Jacksonville's going to do, then he's not in love with the quarterback. Okay.
Gotcha.
So that's my perspective on why I don't think it's a quarterback at 2. Okay. Now I think Malik's character is off the charts. I think he's an incredible leader. He's got a great personality, huge arm, excellent athlete. He has a lot to learn though.
Sure.
And if you're Brad Holmes, you're probably going to get 1 shot at a quarterback, right? And I don't know how much of a gambler he is that he's willing to gamble that Malik takes those next couple of steps. Because remember when we talked about the cap and when we talked about salary cap, he has to hit this year. He can't miss. If he takes Malik and he misses, that's going to hurt. That's going to hurt the cap. That's going to hurt your picks. That's going to hurt a lot of things down the road. And so if he believes in him and he takes him, I'll be a huge Malik fan. I think he's a great person with a great personality and he has a bright future. But it's a gamble to take a quarterback that you're not 100% sold on, or that I think has some very clear flaws that he needs to improve. And it looks worse for him to take Malik and watch Malik bust than it does to pass on Malik and watch Malik succeed, right? Because he can still get a quarterback somewhere else. He's still going to have bullets in the chamber. He's got two picks next year. There's a lot of things that he can do. So my opinion with Malik is that if there's chatter out there about them mean that he's the top guy on their board, I think that's a little bit of a smokescreen to me.
Okay.
So that's my opinion. Now, again, I'm not right all the time. So I'm sorry.
No, but that's why we're asking again. A couple weeks out, we'll know in a few weeks.
Yeah.
I love the rationale.
I'll be there, John. Oh my gosh!
I've been fighting Malik truthers. I've been fighting with Malik truthers for a while now, and I just that argument. It's very simple and it's very straightforward, and I think it's very believable and it's very practical. And
can't argue with emotions, Dan Campbell.
Well, what I was going to say is like that is probably the most coherent argument against Malik on why
that I've heard. Yeah.
Why the Lions probably won't take him. But again, like the flip side to that is all the positive things that you had to say about Malik. Like I think it is really hard to not think Malik is at least in the conversation in some way, shape, or form. Because like you said, not only does he have the physical tools, but like we've even heard Dan Campbell say at the combine, he is more like focused on the character of a quarterback. He is on the actual physical traits. And that's really hard to like avert your eyes away from Malik because his personality, like you said, shines so brightly where you're just like, that dude screams. I was talking to somebody today and I said, Malik Willis has everything that you love about Russell Wilson. Like every character thing that you love about Russell Wilson, Malik Willis has. I just think he's like slightly more, like his ceiling of talent is just a little bit higher than Russell's is.
Ooh.
I think,
Ooh,
I think
you heard it here first, Eric.
I think with refinement, because I don't think Russell has Malik's arm, right? I think
No.
comes it down to like Russell, as great as Russell is, as complete of a quarterback as he is, he does not have that level. He has a very good arm. He doesn't have what Malik has strapped to his shoulder. Sure. But really quick, and then what is your take on, again, if it's not Malik, that it's sounding a lot like Kayvon could be the number one player on the Lions board? Does that seem plausible to you?
It's plausible. I don't know if I buy it though.
He doesn't like it.
I don't know. I mean, look, the chatter has been for a lot of the season that he was the perceived guy, right?
Yeah.
And they showed out at his pro day, and that's fine. I mean, I don't put too much weight into pro days because the year prior only Anthony Lynn went to see Penei Sewell, right? So I mean, like it,
right?
You have to take everything with a grain of salt because it's just data collection, right?
Could be a head fake the other way.
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely, absolutely. It's lying season, man.
Sorry,
everything is lies, right? So it's like
kind of. It's who knows what's going on
exactly, and that's exactly the way they want it too.
Right. It's the first time we really don't know what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like that. I mean,
I was gonna say last year, I think it's like that. I think last year it was kind of like
after your first quarterbacks, it was very much could have went a lot of different ways, right?
Yeah.
The thing is the thing with Thibodeaux is if you're looking for that pure edge guy, that pure come off the edge, then yeah, he could be their number one guy. Mm-hmm. If they're looking for, if they want someone who can set the edge, then they're going to look at one of the other three guys, right? Because Thibodeaux he gets washed too much when he gets moved off his spot more than I would like to see, and that's sure. That's a big thing for me because like if I'm a coaching staff, I'm looking at Travon Walker's tape and I'm saying this guy builds a wall on the edge, and he is athletic enough where I can teach him some pass rush moves, but with Walker, with Thibodeaux, can I teach him to anchor and power and not be so aggressive? Because that's part of the edge in the NFL is you can't just beeline for the quarterback every single time. If you do, you're just a pass rusher and you can't start, right? You have to be able to set the edge in the NFL. And if you don't, then you're not going to start. So I think he can learn it. I think that the potential's there. He just didn't really show it a lot. And it's a weird combo because he's solid against the run. When he gets his hands on guys, he takes them down, right? But he gets moved off his spot or his momentum a lot. Too easily. He lets his momentum, let the tackle just wash him right out. There was there were games when they were playing mobile quarterbacks and the tackle literally would just wash him inside and then the quarterback would roll out to his angle and he had an empty field out to the side. And they did this over and over and over. So that is my biggest worry. I don't care about these character concerns and off the field stuff and all that. That's all washed out, right? That's overblown, right? But I do have concerns about him and certain things that the NFL teams do that they didn't necessarily ask him to do at Oregon. And so that's some of my question marks with him.
Meko has a conspiracy about this.
Yeah, so you'll probably get a conspiracy.
Well, when it happened, we were so confused at the combine.
Yeah.
He takes a phone call, he then kind of bounces, and Meko had a thought.
Yeah, so in my conspiracy essentially is that Kayvon knows where he's going now, and I believe that Kayvon skipped out on the combine because he knows where he's going. I believe in order for him to do that, in order for him to take that type of gamble, he has to know he's going top 3. he has to know he's going to one of the 3 teams that can assure him that they're going to pick him, because anything else is there's too many possibilities, right? We kind of saw this last year with the Lions and Penei Sewell, where apparently, according to Micah Parsons, the Lions told him that they were going to pick him at 7, but they never expected Penei Sewell to be at 7.
Right.
So that's why things change. So for Kayvon to kind of skip out on the combine, because I have a hard time believing that a person that had just went through the day before, like not even like a couple days before, the day before, had all these interviews and had all these questions about his character and his work ethic, would go into a workout and then just be like, nah, it's a long day, I'm gonna skip out. Like when you just answered those questions.
It was like that.
So, well, like if you look at some of the interviews he had before, he was saying that he was going to do everything as well. Like it wasn't just the teams, right? Yeah. Like, from what I gathered is that his agent was saying there's too big of a gap. Like just bail and we'll do it all that, which is, I mean, that's understandable, but I'm sorry if I cut you off though.
No. And so again, my basic conspiracy is that, like, again, that one of those 2 teams would tell him, one of those 3 teams have told him that they are going to take him, and that they didn't need to see him at the combine. Maybe, like you're saying, maybe in conversations with his agent that like, hey, there's too much risk or there's too much gaps in between your day. Like, and they came to an agreement with a team in the top 3 and said, yes, we'll just see him at his pro day because we believe in everything that we've seen on tape and everything that we've done in our own research. And the team that I believe this the most to be about is the Lions, because I believe that with Brad Holmes being out west, he would have been able to scout Kayvon from his freshman year, till now. They drafted Penei Sewell, so obviously they have an inside source and how he performs as a teammate, his work ethic, all of those things. And Brad Holmes has always kind of touted how much research they do, right? How much they lean on their scouts and how much they do as far as scouting players. And so a part of me is just like, I don't know, maybe Brad Holmes and company told him like, no, we believe in everything that we've seen from you. And all we want to do is maybe like, check off a couple boxes, right? Like, let's just make sure, like, run the 40. Let's make sure that time matches what we're seeing on tape. And maybe, like you're saying, there's a little bit of question about his strength. So yeah, go ahead, do the bench press so we can kind of see that on, like, at least be able to see that you can put up a decent bench press, and we'll catch you at the pro day.
It's very, very well thought out.
And like I said, it's I feel like,
hey Thibs, you're good.
I just feel like, again, it typically happens with like number 1 overall picks when you know a guy is like a for sure number 1 lock. Like you can kind of be like, all right, we don't need to see anything from you. But yeah, that's my conspiracy about Kayvon.
You want me to counter?
Yeah, go ahead. Absolutely.
Right. Couple of things. One, outside of the Rams, I'm not sure there's a team in the NFL that cares less about the 40 than the Lions.
Right.
They don't care. They really don't. So I get that part. Secondly, the only time Brad Holmes did go see Thibodeaux at Oregon at UCLA when Oregon was at UCLA, when the Lions were there to play the Rams. He did see him. Beyond that, he hasn't seen him because while he worked for the Rams, he lived in Georgia. So he actually wasn't as close in proximity to go see those guys. Now, he did travel and he did go see them. Part of every pro day is you get to see some of the younger guys as well. But we've seen Brad Holmes. He drafted a lot of Pac-12 guys, right? Last year. And I, was that coincidence? Was that familiarity? It's hard to say, right? It could very easily have been familiarity. The thing is why would he work out at Georgia or at Oregon then? Why would he work out at their pro day? I think that's what I'm not sure about.
Right. And I think, again, maybe it is just, again, to check those boxes, right? Like, again, if though, and again, pure speculation. If it was just
conspiracy corner, Eric, we're just getting funky with it.
Just being like, hey,
like honestly, going there.
Well, because I like it.
I think you would still like to see him, do linebacker drills and do some of these things, but like, it's more like, I think even Brad Holmes has said it when they asked him about pro days, as far as like, well, how much can a guy, I think he said this at the ownership meetings, like how much can a guy change their stock with a pro day? And he was like, well, really, yeah, he's like, not a lot. It's really just to help, like, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but like basically to dot a couple I's and cross a couple T's.
Yeah.
That's kind of what Kayvon could do, right? Is like, well, you know, okay, we know that we can do these things with you. We know we probably can play you at linebacker. We probably can, you know, you can excel as a hand in the dirt kind of guy. Again, and again, my whole thing with Kayvon Thibodeaux, and I think you kind of pointed as well, like some of the off the field stuff has been overblown.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time understanding how a guy who was consensus number 1 for most of the season, until Aiden Hutchinson had this ridiculous senior season, all of a sudden gets bumped. And not just like bumped from 1 to 2, but bumped from like 1. And we're seeing some people mock him as low as like 10. Like that is a ridiculous drop for a guy who consistently showed the skill set that you've even kind of listed out. Like if you want a pass rusher that bends, who, you know, some people say he doesn't have enough moves. He has, and you've already kind of said he has more than Travon Walker.
Sure.
I have a hard time seeing why he's falling so far. And I think the Lions seem like the type of team that would take that gamble of like, no, we trust our process, we trust our research. So it's a good fit for us.
There's 2 reasons. There's 2 reasons I think that you see this thought process. And one could be groupthink, right?
Sure.
Like one person says it and then another person says it, and then all of a sudden the ball starts rolling, and now everybody kind of jumps on that train, and then everybody starts downgrading him, right? That could be it. The second part could be maybe there is something there that rubs teams the wrong way, right? And we will never know, right? We won't, because we don't have access to those interviews. I mean, maybe he walked into the combine interview with the Lions and he knocked it out the park and everything. That's great. Or maybe, you know, he did enough of those that some of the teams in the top 10 were like, we're not so sure. And maybe then those rumors get out. I guess there's a third option. Maybe teams we're saying we're leaking information, false information, because like we said, it's lying season, right? So so
you get teams that want to see him drop and maybe get somebody to be overly cautious and maybe not trust their own process.
So you know what I'm going to get is a Law and Order drop for next week.
Whenever it comes to stuff like this,
I mean, just for the next 3 weeks. I mean, who knows?
It's
kind of figure it out.
Look, I mean, things are going to start jumping the shark in these next 3 weeks too. You're going to see some ridiculous takes coming out.
Right, it's all starting.
I was going to say it's already started.
So Eric, so real quick, so where I currently work, we do the names in real time behind. Right. So we're back there, and I mean, even then, the whole 4 days before that, when we're there prepping, like the stuff I'm hearing. And when I'm back, you know, when we're there backstage and just walk around, I mean, I've introduced myself to Goodell, and I go, what's going on? He goes, it's for show. Like he goes, it's ignore it. I'm like, what are the Lions gonna do? And he's like, I don't really care, but it's a big show. And as they're starting to move the draft different places, I mean, it really feels like what they're gonna do with the combine, start making a traveling road show, which has been hugely successful. I mean, this offseason, I mean, let's be honest, this offseason has been not a lot of hoops or hockey. It's been a lot of NFL talk and free agents and the draft. They've really been able to 364 it here for us.
Yeah, I mean, that's their billion-dollar industry, right? Like that's the way it's going to work. They want to dominate March Madness. You know what I mean? Like with their free agency period. Like the NFL just wants to constantly, and this offseason was nuts with everything, all the trades and the quarterbacks and all that stuff. That was just chaos, and I'm sure the NFL absolutely loved it. But look, I think the teams are a lot further along in the process than the rest of us are, right? Because they've got their stuff set up, and they've got all their work done on these guys before the season's over, right? And whereas like myself, I'm following along and I'm learning about guys and I'm doing stuff, but I'm not digging into like multiple games on guys until after the Lions are done playing, and which puts me behind, right? And so yeah, the media is always going to be playing catch up, and there's always going to be these rumors and this show that everyone puts on. But yeah, I think things have, they're closer to set, I think, than what they want you to believe, right? Right now you're getting final numbers in. You're double checking on guys. You're doing like secondary interviews. You're bringing guys into the Allen Park to get a little bit more information. But yeah, for the most part, they're probably pretty happy with how they have their board laid out. The hard part is we really don't know exactly how it is. Like, look, if Hutchinson or Walker or Thibodeaux, and maybe even Johnson, if any of them were in last year's edge class, they would have been edge one, right? Like all four of those guys are better edge players. So I know that like the narrative is that, Hutchinson played against Ohio State and then he rose up he rose up the media's boards because the media was playing catch up.
Correct.
Like Hutchinson.
Thank you, Erik.
Yeah, he had been there. He would have been awesome last year. Yeah,
drives me crazy a little bit.
Look, he was. I had him as a top, I think 15 is what I had him last year, and then he opted to go back, and I was like, oh wow, I was shocked by it. But look, I mean, Thibodeaux would have been the same thing, but he wasn't eligible, right? And so now he's eligible, and now he's there. I think dropping to 10 would be surprising. I still think he's probably off the board no later than 4. Like Malik, I think Malik's probably off the board by 6. You know what I mean? And if a guy you think is going off the board at 4 or going off the board at 6, then they should be in the conversation at 2. And I think that's a lot of why there's so much speculation around like who the Lions might go with, is because there's a good argument for all of them. They all have positives, they all have flaws, and they're all in that talent range.
Okay, finger dance. So sorry, I just do this all the time, and Easy made fun of me last week, so now it's a thing that I'm doing. So who would you be disappointed who would you be disappointed if the Lions drafted? Like, now I figure, and I think that they really can't miss here. I feel like that it's all pretty even. There's not really, I know we've had some conversation, but who do you think would be a miss if the Lions took them?
I think if they took a tackle, that would be a miss. And because I know that that's a popular thought for whatever reason. I think it bothers me, the idea of taking a tackle.
It angers me.
Oh, Meko's just mad.
I'm right there with
going on?
It angers me beyond.
I agree. I just was curious if there's something else.
No. Look, if they end up with, I can make an argument for all 4 edge guys, right? I can make an argument for Hamilton. We haven't even really talked about Hamilton.
We have not.
Right. And I think there's an argument to be made for him. There's an argument to be made for Malik. That's 6 guys that you could all be happy with.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you give me a succinct argument for Hamilton, and then Gionne, the Hurricane Hendricks, has a question in LA, and then I think we'll try and wrap it up with a bow.
I think the trick with Hamilton is that you have to believe that he's a generational type unicorn talent, right? Like that's the thing. And he shows you that in flashes. The hard part is that when you watch a Hamilton tape, he doesn't make an impact for like long periods of time because he's a safety. And that's just the way it is. And then, but what makes Hamilton so interesting is that he'll go these long periods without impacting, and then he'll line up 10 yards off the line of scrimmage on a 4th and run, and they'll sweep right, and he'll get a tackle for loss because he's just that freaky of a player. Like the way he identifies, the way he closes, the way he can it's just rare. Like to find his size, speed, tackling ability, and intelligence all in one player like that, it's really uncommon. Look, the only flaw, there's 2 flaws I have with Hamilton. One, because he's so tall, he can't flip his hips as quick, which makes him a little bit harder to cover the shifty, like Danny Amendola type slot guys. And then he plays safety. That's it. Those are really the 2 big flaws that Hamilton has. Other than that, he's a very, very good player.
Okay, that was great. Thank you for that. No, I mean that. That's a good description. Gionne had a question, I believe,
Get your linebacker talking
in the
Gionne.
audience.
I
from
Oh,
found
I
him.
was gonna skip that,
on
but
the West Coast.
but I was gonna ask. We've been getting very specific, and it's great, and it's wonderful. I want to broaden it out a little bit and just get your opinion on not even the specific players, but we were talking last week or the week before that it's with the addition of Chark, it's a pretty crowded, and re-signing Khalif Raymond, that it's a pretty crowded receiver room. So whether or not through the whole draft or just those first 5 in the top 100, what do you think the makeup of offense to defense will be of just the picks? Like not even going into the specific players, maybe not even, positions might be nice, but just defense to offense ratio. What do you think that's going to be by the end?
Yeah, on offense, they need a long-term quarterback, and they need a long-term wide receiver X, like your big-bodied guy, right? And I think you can draft a guy maybe like in the 3rd round, a wide receiver in the 2nd or 3rd round that can a year from now be your Kenny Galladay like player, right? I think that's very possible in this class.
Let's shoot for a Calvin Johnson.
I'm just target. He went off target. I think he went off the board last year, right before Penei Sewell to Cincinnati. Chase was my guy last year. It was either Chase or Sewell for me. But yeah, look, so they need a tight end too, and they need a rotational offensive lineman. That's about it. But they could take all 4 of those guys. So if they take all 4 of those guys, then your split is what, 5-4 in your 9 players, right? But it's less pressing need-wise on offense. A lot of it is just, I need stuff that can develop into a player a year from now, a starter a year from now. And that means you can you don't have to take those guys on day 1 necessarily. On defense, you need guys all over the place, right? Like you need guys pretty much at every level. You need an edge. You could probably use some defensive tackle help, especially for the future with Brockers being where he is in his career. You need a starting linebacker, or at least someone who can push to be a starting linebacker. And then a guy who can also prepare to play with Derek Barnes as your tandem for the future. Cornerback is not as stressful with me as long as your guys who are injured are recovering at a timely pace, right? Sure. And the team knows that, we don't. If the team thinks they're not recovering in time, then they're going to need more. They might prioritize a corner a little bit, earlier than we expect, right? Maybe like in the 3rd round or something, if they don't think the like Okudah or Jerry Jacobs are ready, right? And then they need a safety, right? In the split zone scheme that they run, you need 2 safeties that are interchangeable. And then one of the staples of Aaron Glenn's defenses has always been to have a hybrid corner safety type player available. PJ Williams, he did it for a long time. Malcolm Jenkins, he did it with in the Saints as well. I think what we saw last year, just out of necessity with Will Harris, is that he may be trying to turn Will Harris into this kind of corner safety hybrid role. And if that's the case, then they need a starter next to Tracy Walker. So you've got starters pretty much at every level on defense. So there's a lot more. That's why I think they're going to end up going a little bit heavier, especially with those first 5 picks on defense.
Listen, that's my follow-up.
I was going to, hold on, John, really quick, because I do want you to get in here, because I do think you have some good questions about linebacker as well. But I like that you pointed that out about Will Harris, because I was pleasantly surprised by how he played corner. It was a welcome surprise. And to John's point, though, as long as they come away with George Pickens or Alec Pierce as a wide receiver, I will be happy. Just one of those guys.
I think Pierce at 66 makes a lot of sense. I think he fits stylistically with the type of receiver Holmes has targeted in the past. Pickens would be good. You might have to spend 34 on him, though.
I'll do it. I'm seeing him chuck I'm sorry as a Michigan fan, but seeing him chuck Michigan corners just brought so much joy deep down.
Well, I'll tell you, he was a great player before he got injured, and that was when he was barely back too, right? Like,
Yeah.
and that was him not at his best doing stuff like that. Pickens is a guy. Look, you could take Georgia players with the first 5 picks and I'd be fine. You know what I mean? Like, that's just how talented Georgia is on both sides. So, yeah.
Are we gonna do the linebacker? One more. Okay.
Last one.
Thank you. So, Pro Football Focus had us dead last in run defense in the entire league. And so I've been high on linebackers all offseason. I feel like after we signed Chark, I was like, okay, linebackers are number 1 priority. Mm-hmm. But then Dan Campbell comes out and says they're going to be switching to a more 4-2. And then so after they re-signed Sean Dion Hamilton, Anzalone, and then signed Chris Board, where's the room for one in the draft? Is there room? And Derek Barnes, is going to be returning, and with only 2 linebackers on the field at any given time. Say you spend high draft capital on this linebacker, like where's the room for them? I guess.
Don't you diss Jared Davis either?
Oh right, no. Jared Davis. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, here's the deal.
No, I know he's a big fan of the show, so I want to apologize to him personally.
You should.
Here's the thing with the draft, you have to look beyond the immediate. And I think we get caught up in looking at like, what are they doing now? The only linebacker
the world we live in, Eric. That's
100%.
I get it.
The only linebacker under contract beyond 2022 is Derek Barnes. So if you draft a linebacker, you're drafting that linebacker for contributing now and because you're hoping that they're going to be sticking around for later, right? Like Anzalone just signed a 1-year deal. Board is one. Josh Woods, they're all ones, right? They're all 1-year contracts. So that's why I think linebacker is a bigger need than I think it's getting credit for right now, is because they really don't have a lot going on after him. It's the same thing kind of at safety. Outside of Tracy, you got a lot of guys that are on 1-year deals, right? So let me see, Will Harris. This is last year for Will Harris too. So safety, linebacker, those picks make a lot of sense on day 2 because you're needing to put players in roles for 2023.
Sure. No, that was great.
That was awesome. Anything else, guys? Anything else?
It's great.
I was gonna say I have a ton of things that we can talk to you about, but I do not want to do another 2-part episode. I do not want to have to do. We kept Easy here for like almost 2 hours last week, and it was not fun to edit and upload.
That's a great place to ending on personal vindication for my pounding the table for linebackers for 2 months. I'm great.
That's awesome. Well, Eric, do you have any questions for us? Right, we've asked you plenty, and we've got. Is there any questions for us? The Questionable Crew Questionable podcast. Again, not as popular as you guys, but trying to do our best.
Look, I'm always interested in just how people, like, what their aspirations are, what their goals are, how do they, what do they want to do in the business, and then like what can I do to kind of help you? You know what I mean? Like, right. I got to where I'm at because people open doors for me, and I want to be able to do what I can for other people. And I caught the podcast that you guys did with Jeremy, and I was like, hey, like, these guys are smart guys and they know what they're talking about. And so like when you reached out and we talked, I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'll come on, because these guys seem like they're not just thrown doo-doo against the wall and hoping to see what happens. You know what I mean? Like, it's ridiculous. Honestly,
sometimes for fun though.
It's all. I'm happy with fun, but you have to have a level of intelligence in order to be successful and to keep your audience. So I don't know a ton about you guys. This is the first time we've really met. So, I mean, I'm always interested to hear and learn and see what you guys are up to and where you're hoping to go with everything.
Well, Eric, we appreciate that. So thank you for the compliment there. It means a ton coming from you.
Absolutely. And I think, again, to answer the question probably simply, and I think I can kind of speak for the three of us when we say this, like the goal is to just kind of keep growing, right? And to be able to showcase in the same way that you guys do, right? As that we can be fans, but still be very knowledgeable about the teams that we're passionate about, that we're not just throwing takes against the wall to get clicks, but we are trying to have good educational or good healthy conversation about the teams that we love. So I think, again, probably speaking more so for myself, one of the ways that, like, again, we are always just looking for support, being able to share our content out there, being able to kind of get our name out there so that people do just, feel inclined to check us out, because I tend to think you, Jeremy, and Easy seem to be good representations of, like, guys come on the show and they tend to have a good time with us, and they tend to walk away at least semi-impressed by our ability to hold a conversation.
Keyword semi. But I think that go ahead, Erik. Yeah.
No, I was just gonna say, I think you're doing well. I know you guys had said you're 35, 36 episodes in or something like that. I wouldn't have known it. Like, I would have. You guys are pretty smooth with everything, and you've done a real nice job of laying everything out.
Appreciate that. And so to add on to Meko's point is, yes, we're here. Yeah, we're here for Detroit, right? I think that's the big thing too, is we do the questionable teas, and that's how it started. For us was to try and create some fashionable Detroit wear for the sports teams that wasn't just the same old. I know brands have done it, and then they kind of get stuck in their ways, and our goal was to continue to grow with the fan base and grow with the teams, because we've been not good, and hopefully we'll be good soon. And so as that happens, we should have some good shit to wear. And so, Darren McCarty, I've known him for years, and so he's been a big supporter of us and questionable tees. So he rocks some of our stuff, and that's how we've been able to get it going. And, hopefully we can support and help you guys. I know there was a little bit of, we don't need to get into it, but I think that, we're here to help, POD and what you guys need to, on top of everything you have. So we're there for you guys as well. So anything you need, if you need a banner, back behind you, or anything you need, you come to us, we'll hook you up. But I think, again, that was the thing, is to kind of be just another voice for Detroit, but another comfortable place, a safe place for Detroit, where it's not so aggressive like on some shows, or so opinionated on some shows. Sure, we have our opinions, but we're not going to bite anybody's head off, and we're not going to get angry or annoyed about it. Sure, we'll get excited. That's the whole point. We're going to have fun. Mandatory.
I'm not going to promise that I won't get annoyed.
That's fine. But you don't get, like, angry about it. Anyway, but that's the thing. And the biggest thing you can do to help us, Erik, is we have Dan Campbell t-shirts that we've done and we're doing, and we have Jamal Williams pieces. I need to get in their hands, because I think Jamal would die if he saw this. I just think he'd love his piece we did for him. So, and that's just me. And I may have to wait outside of Allen Park in the morning at 5 a.m. until he comes in to get it. I'll figure it out. But anyway, that's where I go. So, Gionne, any comments, concerns, criticism?
No, nothing. No, I was just piggybacking off of Meko's. I get annoyed sometimes. I've been known to roll my eyes on the.
I mean, that did not happen today.
And but yeah, no, but yes, thank you. So yeah, thank you for coming on, and because I know that this it really helps, because fans of yours want to check you out, and so
want to check you out.
No, yeah, we do. We appreciate all the support that you guys over at POD have given us. It's helped a ton in so many ways. So we appreciate you taking the time to come out here, hang out with us. Literally, like I said, put us through a masterclass of salary cap.
Yeah, that was ridiculous, Erik. Thank you again. I mean, you should charge for that. Sure.
I'm serious. You could tomorrow morning. You should go to PowerPoint with a whole presentation of this is why this should be a masterclass, and we can charge a crazy amount of money for it.
Jeremy may downplay it, but he's pretty smart about the cap as well. I mean, Jeremy's got a very wide range of stuff that he likes to see.
He's very good at downplaying everything that he's good at.
I was gonna say, you guys as a whole, you guys are too, Erik. You guys are very. I think we told Jeremy this when you guys
low key
he was on here. this is in no way trying to blow smoke up your guys behind or anything like that. But I think
yes,
I think you guys are hands down the best Detroit Lions like coverage of in the state of
easy,
Michigan, like easily, right? You guys do an amazing job of balancing your guys' fandom with actual facts and strong opinions. And to Scott's point, also doing it without like beating people down about it, like not really like, bad mouthing your fans
and
like
standing your ground, which can be hard, right? Especially on Twitter and these guys. I don't understand. We're just you guys are just commenting and just getting like I don't get it. I mean, I do because it's entertainment now. Sports and entertainment is hitting that. It's getting more and more leaning towards just entertainment, even more than sports. But we appreciate that, Eric.
The tough part when you work in this business is that, I like 80-90% of the time people tend to agree with you or at least understand what your thought process is, right? But it's the 10% that is the loudest and the part that like makes you want to turn your phone off for the day, right? But that's why I enjoy coming on a podcast and interacting with guys like you, because if you're smart and you're intelligent and you're willing to listen, like it's easy to have these fun conversations. It's easy to get into like the details of like a salary cap or something like that and try and make it fun, because like you do a really good job of making it an enjoyable experience. And I don't have to like sit here and be like, oh my, am I worried that like you guys are going to try and like hot take me or something? Like, no, I'm not worried about that. Like, and sometimes look, when I was on the radio last, I do radio spots every once in a while. I hate them. But like I went on last year. I went on a
so they try and get you. They're trying to get you.
No, yeah. I did a spot last year, and they said, "Who do you think the Lions are going to pick?" And I said, "I think they're going to take Penei Sewell." And he said, "Well, how do you think that's going to work out? Explain your process." And I'm like, "Well, I think quarterback, blah blah blah." And then I think Sewell gets there, and they're like, well, that's a convoluted way of like getting the guy that you want at 7. And I'm like, all right, well, whatever. I'm like, you asked me to explain it. I explained, but he tried to get me. And now I'm like, well, okay.
And I was right. So later.
Yeah. I don't want to go back on his show. But at the same time, I kind of do want to go back on the show.
Kind of rub it in. Like, remember when I was here last year? Yeah. Who was right?
Exactly.
So that convoluted way to get Penei happen.
No, yeah. So Eric, we hope to have you on again in the future, because again, like this was awesome. This was like a hugely just beneficial conversation for us. I think our audience is going to love this episode. A lot of people were excited once we kind of even tweeted out that you were coming on. The only like hot take thing I will obviously have to admit to is, yes, I did create the thumbnail that said that they're taking Travon Walker. But I mean, I think that's a take that you would strongly stand behind as far as like your opinion and what you think the Lions would be doing.
Yeah, like when you get to a point, like you have an opinion, like Scotty said, we're willing to stand it by our opinions. Well, this is what we think. This is what if you don't like it, that's okay. I mean, but I like where I've come to at this point with the top guys, and I'm okay with it. And so I'm comfortable repeating myself on Twitter and telling guys why, I like this or that. And I'm glad that I get to come on and like explain it even a little bit further, because sometimes when I'm on our podcast, like, you forget things. Yeah. Like it's harder, like, and so you guys gave me a nice open runway to get my hands on, and I hopefully I did a good job.
Well, sometimes too, I'm assuming you guys know what the other one's thinking, so you don't have to explain it as much too. So I'm very happy at asking some of the dumber questions to get us. So anyway, we appreciate it, Eric.
Absolutely. So we are going to let you get out of here, because again, don't want to take up any more of your time. You've already been more than gracious with your time. And I would say like if you don't know where to find Eric, like to give out your handle and stuff, but I'm pretty sure like people know you, so they know where to find you.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's only so many Schlitts, and there's only one Erik with a K Schlitt in the world. So you Google it, and there you go.
That might have to be your T-shirt. Will do for you, Erik with a K Schlitt.
Man,
deal with it.
We do know Eric.
Eric
like, stuff.
I have I have a group of fans that call themselves Schlitt heads, right? Like they
Okay,
love it.
well, there we
right?
go. Questionable exclusive Schlitt heads.
I mean, like you can do a lot of things with that last name, and it was so I enjoy it. I enjoy the
We got to remember, what else do we owe Erik?
Well, I mean, because Erik never got a I'm a Real Journalism hoodie.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, Erik, what size are you? Yeah, tears.
Oh, I'm like an XL. Yeah, I'm bigger guy.
Yeah, well, me too.
Oh yeah, we'll get.
We'll
connect
ship
with you
that out.
offline and get your.
We just need
information.
we need your info,
and we'll get that sent your way.
At least, and we'll make a Schlitt heads mock-up for you. No, you might have to wait a week, but I'll do one this weekend for you, Schlitt heads. That's good.
But yeah, Scotty.
So I think that's it. Yeah. So again, Erik, thank you for coming on the Questionable Podcast. Please like, follow, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcast. And we are on YouTube. Please hit that subscribe button as well. We're trying to grow that slowly but surely. Again, I want to thank my wife and daughter, the family, the crew, everybody. Erik, again, thank you for being on. John and Meko, thank you for being on. And again, the beginning of the podcast was a little shaky because I was trying not to say Tuesday, so the intro stunk. So my outro's better. Meko.
I mean, it was up until that. No, I'm kidding. No, man.
Okay, fine. Skipping Meko.
No, I definitely got to thank my family, my wife, my kids, for their continued support and let me hang out with you guys late at night. And yeah, thanking you guys for just holding me accountable and kicking it with me and dealing with my
accountability. So adult. Gionne.
Yeah, as always.
Bye.
And you guys, thanks, Erik, for being here. Living in gratitude, baby.
You are so LA.
If I wanted to be truly LA, I would have said I would have used the phrase abundance mindset.
Oh, are you hanging out with Brad Pitt this weekend, or is that next? Who's this? Who you hanging out with this weekend?
I paused too much. I blew it.
It's just you're hanging out with the crew, and you just don't want to make us feel bad. Okay, all right. Anyway, we'll wrap it up. Erik, thank you again. Meko, Gionne, this is the Questionable Podcast. Scotty Questions out.